as free agency picks up and starts to kind of get closer to being started up, we see a lot of the most prominent names inside of the Western scene in terms of just the mid laners as it stands right now. Some of the top laners from the EU scene getting picked up pretty quickly. I mean, we saw Perks get picked up yesterday. We saw Power of Evil get picked up the next day after that. We're seeing a lot of the big names inside of the scene getting picked up, and that's going to leave a large discrepancy in power between the bottom teams, because a lot of these teams, in terms of just like the NA scene, are getting very drastic upgrades in terms of just the players they had previously. I mean, again, maybe not a very drastic upgrade in terms of just Power of Evil to Bjergsen. I think this is a really sidegrade, maybe even a downgrade in terms of just how they played inside of the NA scene. But Power of Evil looked a lot better inside of the world scene, and I think this is a really good showing. He had a really good showing there. He showed that he was able to play against international competition for the most part. He really did play well against a lot of the better play. Kind of better competition than we saw in the NA scene. He played well all around. And we're going to have to see whether or not that transitions into the next season. Because, again, we do have somebody who I would say has a lower champion pool than Bjergsen for the most part. He resorted to a lot of Azir, Syndra, and what was it? Orianna. Orianna was the most played. So for the most part, we're gonna see a player who I would say is kind of a little bit less like versatile in terms of just player base, and he doesn't have one of those big. He gets this character, he's gonna take over the game. We're gonna see a lot more resorting into an Orianna pick, because that's usually what every team that's had him recently does. We're gonna have to see whether or not that transitions Cloud9's kind of play style into a more team fight oriented. Instead of an early game, we win lane and then we kind of just forget what we're doing around the map. Because again, the biggest problem that I have right now with Cloud9 right now, TSM right now, is the fact that their mid game transition ability is just abysmal. They probably have one of the worst ones in the world, just especially for an elite team, or considerably an elite team for a region at the very least. They seem to have the worst transition into the mid game, something that, I mean, honestly, both Team Liquid and Cloud9 seem to have picked up the pace of their game and are looking to make a more optimal mid-game transition with their requirements this season, with Alphara being able to transition them into 1-3-1 to be able to pick up the pace, and Cloud9 getting Perks to be able to have a lot more aggressive early game laning and the ability to play around the map a lot more frequently in terms of just not just a team-oriented mid laner who doesn't lane that well. I mean, we see TSM picking up Power of Evil, who all around I think is a more team fight oriented mid laner. He has the ability to rotate around the map, but again, nothing really that he brings to the table is a lot more valuable than what I would say Bjergsen does again. So it's not really about this specifically. What this does bring, actually, what I do think this actually brings, is something that we saw a lot from Power of Evil in the past. I think Power of Evil has shown a lot of the times that he's willing to take that second, kind of that back seat in terms of shot calling. It doesn't have to be the leading voice on a team. He's willing to take that back seat and transition into just one of the more optimal and kind of more aggressive laners, and being able to provide a lot of power in terms of just what he's able to bring to the table. Like we don't see, like, Bjergsen again brings a lot to the table. He's really valuable. He's a really good player all around. But again, what I do think a problem with TSM has been the same exact issues that have stemmed from each roster, and the only correlating piece between those is Bjergsen. So I assume he's probably he probably has one of the louder voices inside of the scene. He probably is one of the more talkative people in terms of just the voice comms, and he probably is trying to be the shot caller. I think that with somebody else taking the mantle of shot calling, I think that we're not going to see a lot of those. We get a pick inside a bot lane, but we lose 3 turrets instead inside of the top, like in the top side, because we didn't actually push the lanes preemptively and we just saw a pick and we wanted to go for it. We're not going to see a lot of that coming out of Bjergsen, out of this team anymore, because again, a lot of the rumors right now are going to be transitioning this team. It seems, again, a lot of them, not any of them confirmed besides maybe the Power of Evil one, but we heard a lot of rumors of Ignar coming over to this team and Impact. It seems like it's going to be Impact, Spica, Power of Evil, Doublelift maybe, and Ignar is going to be. This is going to be the solid all around team. So Impact in the top lane, Ignar in the bot lane. I don't know if I mixed up the names or not. They just both have similar sounding names. But all around, this is going to be a transition for this team. We're going to see whether or not they're able to keep the, like, they're obviously going to take a slower look at this game. They're going to be a lot less not as fast paced as they were in both summer and spring of last year with the with kind of like substantially worse laning top laner in impact if they do actually pick him up. Again, it's not a confirmed thing. That is just a rumor that I'll actually link inside of the I'll link that inside of the description later on, so if you guys want to see. But for the most part, it's looking to be impact and all that stuff, which is gonna expedite, like kind of essentially all around slow down the pace of this team. There's gonna be a lot less aggressive laning, and there's gonna be a lot more team fight oriented team fight oriented kind of players on this team, with impact being a weak side top laner who's really strong at playing weak side, and we have Ignar, who's going to be taking the mantle of the fast-paced roaming support. Again, we can attribute to him to like kind of a similar case with Hylissang. He's really aggressive in his laning, but he has a lot of hit or miss situations. I think with the state of which I think support is going to be at next season, I do think that he's in a good shape. They did in my opinion put support in a pretty decent shape with the new item changes. I think it's going to be good for him all around. But we're going to have to see whether or not what actually that transitions TSM into, because it seems like their identity has drastically shifted. With like the acquirement of these players, 100% makes this team play in a completely different way. None of these players are even similar, but besides the one that they didn't change for the most part, are really not similar to the way the players they're replacing actually played. Broken Blade. If again, all these rumors, this is hypothetical, but for the most part, Broken Blade transitioning from Bjergsen, Impact. I think this is, they're gonna have Broken Blade to Impact. I think we're gonna have a lot less of a laning prodigy. He's gonna be a lot weaker inside of the laning phase, but he's gonna be able to play weak side, which I think Broken Blade really wasn't able to. We have Ignar, who's a lot better just all around. Pretty much everything that he does is better than Biofrost if they actually do pick him up. Again, the reason I do think these rumors actually make sense is because it really does shape an identity if they're picking up both Impact and Ignar. It really shapes this team into something that actually makes sense, in my opinion. This team actually seems like something that would make, if you're going to build a team that knows, is kind of team fight oriented and you want to pick all these players up, it really would, each piece that they replace seems to be the most optimal piece for the most part. All around, I do think that these rumors have some validity to them, just because, identity-wise, it would actually make sense for them. But at the same time, we're going to have to see what it actually, if these actually come to fruition. I'm really excited to see the power reveal, though. He really does seem to be, he was one of the best mid laners inside of the NALCS last season. He looked really good at Worlds. His Cinder, again, I'd like to see more. Maybe again, it's not because he's not able to play anything else. Maybe they chose to play these characters because that's what they thought the team would look better on if he played Orianna and Azir a massive amount. But he looked incredible on his Vayne, so we'll see actually if they actually. I don't think they'll actually pull out the Vayne. I think that it was a one-time thing against Unicorns of Love, who didn't really just seem to be on the same level as everybody else at the world stage. We're gonna have to see whether or not they're able to. Transition their entire kind of play style as in comparison to what they had this season, because it's going to be a really drastic shift for some of the players that are going to be sticking around on his team. Spica, who's really not had a team yet, is going to have to transition his whole entire play style to a different kind of play style than he's really used to. He's only played on one team specifically so far, and he's really going to have to see whether or not he can play in a completely different way than he did with TSM in the previous year. Doublelift, I really do hope he picks it up. I think he's still a really good ADC. He was really bad last season. I'm not going to make any excuses for that. But again, maybe the transition from utility to more marksman, kind of more aggressive laning ADCs is going to be good for him, especially with a better all-around support. Maybe he does look better. So I'm going to say it's not over for Doublelift. I do think this is a good idea to, at the very least, keep him on the team. Again, with a better laning ADC and a better shape for just non-utility ADCs, I think we might see a better Doublelift. All around, I think, though, that this is, again, probably the second biggest news in terms of this leak. He kind of got outshone by Perks going to Cloud9, but again, it's still a really good pickup for TSM. I think they're going to really fill the gap that Bjergsen left behind, because it's one of the few people that I think isn't really going to leave a big deficit inside of the mid lane by picking him up instead. So, again, I'm excited. I don't know what that means. I still think they're probably the third best team. They're not. I don't think they're on the level of Team Liquid or Cloud9 with these changes, but they do still look like a solid team, who at the very least, if they put it together, can actually be the best team. But again, their ceiling is not quite as high as the other two teams, but again, they look like a more cohesive team than the other two. So that's pretty much it, and that's really all I have to say about that. Yeah.